Welcome to the podcast for Your Family Bank, where we talk about creating legacy and how you're going to pass that on. So with my guest today is Danny Karon. He's another attorney, so you get two attorneys today. So hopefully you guys are nice and energized, ready for that. So Danny, why don't you take some time and introduce yourself?
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks. Two for the price of one. I'm not sure if that's a blessing or a curse for your listeners. But anyway, I'm an attorney. I'm based in Cleveland, Ohio. I do mostly consumer class action work, but I've of late pivoted to more of what I call a legal wellness brand that I'd be happy to share with you guys because I think it's more applicable to your listeners and kind of what their daily experience is as non-lawyers, because there are all these consumer perils and pitfalls and problems out there that people don't know to expect, much less know how to deal with. And I really want to empower people with the law and let them understand the law and create legal aptitude and awareness so that they feel protected from the law in a way that they didn't think was accessible to folks without money and time and power, because the law is really a right, not a privilege for those folks who can afford it. So that's really what I'm pouring my best efforts into these days.
Awesome. Yeah. We take the same approach with estate planning. There's so many tools and advantages for these super high net worth individuals. And we're taking those tools, providing in a way that people can use them and access them, even if they don't have, millions and millions of dollars. So that's why you fit perfectly in the show, and we're glad to have you.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so let's start with, we always start with something unique. What is something unique about you most people wouldn't know, from your bios and that kind of stuff? Something that will really keep you, make you stand out.
What I think is unique and kind of cool is that, consistent with this new brand I was describing, which I call Your Lovable Lawyer, because I really want to be accessible to folks, is that I have my first, hang on. I have my first, it's not out yet. Here it is. I have my first book coming out, and it's an on-brand book. It's called, Your Lovable Lawyer's Guide to Legal Wellness, Fighting Back Against the World That's Out to Cheat You. Because, boy, I tell you, there are real problems out there that people need to know from, whether it's what to do in an auto accident, how to handle traffic court, why you need a will and a trust, and why they're not just reserved for the privileged few, just like is in your wheelhouse. I'm going through a little personal tumult now. It's kind of a first world problem. Both kids just, they're out of the house. Our older one's in Brooklyn. Our younger one just graduated from American University in D.C. He's in D.C. working, and it's just us now. So we decided to move out of Cleveland, kept the office there, which is why I said I'm Cleveland-based, and we're splitting time between Florida and Chicago. We started in Chicago years ago before we had kids. I thought we'd have all of our time for ourselves when my wife insisted on getting not just a dog, but a puppy. So we're dealing with a puppy through all this existing tumult, and boy, I'm telling you, moving and unpacking with a puppy, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I mean, moving's bad enough. My wife tells me her grandma used to wish on her worst enemies that they would have to move twice a year. Throw in a puppy. That's what I'm dealing with. First world problem, to be sure, but it's a pain in the neck.
Yeah, no, definitely is. Well, congrats on getting the kids out of the house and being successful with that. That's already an accomplishment. That tells me you're the right guy on the show, because we want to help our kids get to a place where they can, succeed in the world, both on the work level and on the financial level. And so I want to start, with your own childhood. Was there any major experiences or overall themes that you felt like you learned from your family? Like a big experience that was like, hey, I don't want to experience that in my adult life, or hey, that was really cool. I want to make sure I replicate that pattern.
Well, here's kind of an ongoing experience that just literally presented 20 minutes ago while we were futzing around trying to get our connection started. My dad, and my parents are still around, my dad would always lean on us about investing and being smart and safe and having a will and a trust. And our will and trust is literally right down there in the drawer, and making sure your nest is suitably feathered, not just for yourself, but for your kids. So now that both, till this day, when he starts phone calls with, hey, Dan, have you checked out your holdings against the S&P 500? I mean, it rankles me because I'm so sick of it, but it's such a well-intentioned, well-meaning thing from a nice, good, helpful, supportive space and place. But, it still gets you a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, get the message. So literally before our call, we were talking to our Schwab guy about keeping things, making sure things are where they should be, and the trajectory and the asset allocation and some new money and this and that. And I said to our Schwab rep, hey, have you talked, did you have a chance to talk to Morgan, our son, and Jillian, our daughter, about getting on the phone with you? Because God forbid they should listen to me where it concerns investing, kind of like, the example I just gave you. You know how it is. So he said, yeah, let me email them both, because Morgan, who just started, needs to bump up his IRA contributions, and Jillian's got some extra cash. She really needs to put it to work because the market's flying. So I figured, you know what? I'll let him deal with it because they're more apt to listen to him than they are to me. So what do? I email him anyway. I said, Matt's going to be emailing you to get together. You really ought to pay mind to what he says, get a date on the books, because that is an enduring, permanent lesson you really gotta take advantage of. Because if you do the projection, I mean, it goes like this, and we all know the numbers, and a little bit of effort will really pay off in the end. So that was a lesson that I got early. I get it still to this day. I pay it forward. Maybe it's not the best received from me, but I think it's really necessary, essential, and enduring.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of key things there. One is, you being consistent in your investing. The second one is being consistent with your messaging to your kids, because your dad's still making sure, hey, are you on track? You're doing it. So parenting is never done, is what I've heard.
No,
and so a lot of cool things there. So it sounds like your dad, fairly successful. What was kind of your upbringing there? Did you talk about money in your house?
Well, actually, he's a lawyer too. He does, he did. He's golfing now more than anything. He did personal injury, mostly product liability work, which is defective products. Did a lot of work for people who are victims of defective gas, hot water heater explosions, of all things. I mean, really grisly stuff. I worked on a trial with him, and let me tell you, the last kind of plaintiff you want to be is in a gas explosion. They're the grossest. They're horrible. The lucky ones died. So he did that, and that's all I kind of knew coming up. So I majored in speech communication, which isn't good for a whole heck of a lot other than law school. So I go to law school thinking that's what I want to do. I want to help victims. But then the blood and guts really didn't sit well with me. So I decided I wanted to do something more antiseptic, something more business oriented. And that's what led me to plaintiff's class actions. That said, I've also gotten really involved in defense work, because it's one thing to get paid per hour like these defense lawyers. It's another to get paid perhaps like us plaintiffs lawyers. I kind of don't like the perhaps part all the time. A little bit of both is not a bad thing. So I quickly learned that there are victims on both sides of the V. A lot of bad sham shakedown plaintiffs cases really ruin it for the well-behaving companies, which ruin it for the marketplace. So I'm doing a bit of both, and I'm balancing that work against the branding work, which is a lot of TV, as much as I can get. That said, I taped a hit for News Nation on Sunday, and they killed it, and it never aired. It happens. It sucks. I mean, I was in the suit, the makeup, the lighting, the mic. I boned up on this topic, and it's like it never even happened. But you know what? It's how it is. But I'm really trying to promote this legal wellness brand, trying to turn it into a TV show, like Becoming the Legal Dr. Phil, because nobody's doing this out there. And I can talk more about my kind of vision and what got that started. But that's kind of where I am now in terms of my trajectory, place and time, and goals.
So how do you handle, with your kids? Was there things you did when they were younger? Like, how much exposure to money and talking about family finances did you do that you think led them to be where they are? And is there anything you wish you would have done more of?
Well, you want to do it, but not too much, right? You don't want to let them let on to what you have, because you know where that can lead. But at the same time, they have to have some aptitude for that. No different than they do for legal issues. I mean, money, relationships, health, hygiene, emotional wellness, all these things. They're all bound up into this kind of whole big wellness package. And I think it's important to talk about it. And when they start making it, to have a mindset where where they're going to save, where saving is like part of their fiber, where it's not even a question of whether, it's a question of how much. And that's where they are. And I'm really grateful for that. I don't know how I pulled that off, and my wife helped pull that off, but we pulled it off. That said, they got to get back to the Schwab guy and get that appointment set up. But they're pretty good about that, because they know how the the trajectory works too. You do a little math and they're like, you know what, I'll put in the effort.
Outside of money, what were the values and things that you guys thought were important that you tried to instill in your kids, and you're starting to see that kind of come to fruition? If you have like specific stories of things that you did, even better.
You really got to own it. I mean, if you did something wrong, you really got to own it. That's a kind of a big thing with me. I see way, way, way too little of it in my practice, where a company will do something wrong and they'll precisely and distinctly not own it. They'll fight for 10 years. We had a case involving LCD flat panels. The panel that I'm talking on now and that you're talking on now, and also TVs and laptops, TVs, and desktop computers. And it's all the big names you'd expect who make these things. And they were all caught with their hands in the cookie jar, fixing prices for like 10 years or so. And it was dead to rights. I mean, come on. Everybody knew it. The Department of Justice got them. The European Union Commission got them. The Australians got them. The enforcement authorities in Asia got them. Everybody got them. So we filed the civil cases in the U.S. for the purpose of getting people their money back for having overpaid for flat panel displays in their laptops, desktops, and TVs. You would have figured, you know what? We've made a bunch of money on it. We'll own it. It's the values that we teach our kids. We're going to practice what we preach. You know what? No way. Maybe 10, 11, 12 years later, we settled the case for like $2 billion. But boy, it wasn't without a lot of pain and hardship and angst and sweat and all this stuff because, it's kind of like that golden rule. If you think about it, you got to treat people like you want to be treated. And they weren't treating people so well, and they didn't take responsibility, and they made us put them through it. And were it not for that, I'd be out of a job as a litigator. You not so much as an estate planning lawyer, but the courts would have nothing to do. And, I don't wish this on folks and on the marketplace and on society, but at the same time, it keeps me busy. And that's something that I think is shameful and shameless and ought not be, practiced in real life. It's much less, and especially by your kids. And they don't. They're really good about that. I mean, they step up and they own it and they don't lie and they're honest. And you don't get that all the time. Look around. I mean, God, look at these fraudsters. I can't tell you. I get probably 20 robocalls a day by schemers and emails looking to put their hand in my pocket. These folks don't get it. Mercifully, thankfully, and understandably, my kids do.
Yeah, and it all comes back to, I think in the home, what are you doing to facilitate those and teach your kids? Now, eventually, yeah, they have agency. They're not all going to turn out that way. But if we're intentional with how we parent, intentional doing those things in our home, that perpetuates out. And that's going to have a bigger impact than if we try and catch them after the fact and make them do these things. Like you said, they won't even own up to it, even though they've been by every authority saying, hey, you did this wrong.
And you know what else, by the way? When they hit 18 or when they go to college, I was talking to a buddy, who was it? A buddy literally today whose kid is a freshman. When there's a problem in school, you don't call the school, you don't call the professor, you're done. It's the kid's responsibility to recognize and fix. And they've got to have the tools and the awareness to do it the right way. Because if they haven't learned this on the front end, I mean, they're just going to get screwed on the back end because there's so many perils and pitfalls out there and you cannot do anything. And a lot of kids don't want you to. They're like, I'm 18. I want to do it on my own. I want to make my own mistakes. And you don't want them to, but you got to watch them step in it a little bit. Maybe not as a concern of safety. Like my son's ducts were dirty. I said, you got to clean them. He's like, I'll get to it. He never did. I did it myself. He got pissed off at me and they found black mold. And now they put an ultraviolet light in, and it's killing the mold. On one level, he's grateful for not breathing it in, and he's not going to get killed. But on the other, he's a little pissed off at me because I overstepped. So that's like a weird balance. You got to figure it out. So he's actually pretty pissed off at me right now.
Well, it all comes back to when do you start that? I think we as parents, we tend to want to protect them and shield them and do as many things as we can for them, and for as long as we can, from a good place. Like you said, we want to help, but at the end of the day, you got to give them those opportunities to mess up. Otherwise, they're really going to mess up when it's further down the road. I've got a middle schooler, and it's shocking how many parents go in and talk to the teachers and negotiate with them and trying to get them a better grade and do all those things. And it's like, why? Our kid does that. Like we have a conversation. Hey, your grades are terrible. You better go in and talk to your teacher and figure out how you can fix this, because this is the consequence if you don't. And then it's on him. If he doesn't go and talk to the teacher and get it fixed, okay, well then we already told you what the consequences were. Here's how it's going to lay out, and then goes from there. But I'm not stepping in and having that conversation. It's
I
not
know,
my
but
grades.
how tough is it to watch? I mean, you're like, it's like you're watching, what was like the Truman Show or whatever. You're watching from the outside, hoping he does the right thing. And, most of the time they do. They have a good upbringing. Like I can easily tell you're giving, but when they don't, you just want to get in and fix, but you can't, and it sucks, and it's like, ugh. But not just with grades and with relationships, but my whole thing is like as it concerns the law, because if you take a look at like say the daytime TV landscape, there's all this emotional wellness content out there, like Dr. Phil talking about how to be safe and sound in your mind and body, and Mel Robbins and all these folks. If you take a look, you'll also see a lot of like financial wellness content out there, like Jim Cramer, Susie Orman, how to set up a 529 for your kid or a 401k for yourself. But where it concerns, what I'd submit is a third wellness bucket, legal, which, by the way, when it tips, it spills into the first two because you freak out and you go broke. There's nothing there but these really exploitative courtroom shows that show up after disaster is struck. And they prey on that because it's good for ratings. And I thought that was so unfair. Like I wanted to turn the dial back and prevent people from stepping in it rather than showing up after the fact. Like if you go to the doctor for a physical, it's to keep from getting sick. I wanted to give people the tools to administer a legal physical, to go through their legal lives, to understand what it is they need to know and know to avoid to keep from getting legally sick. And to go back, that's what the brand and that's what the book really go toward, because it's all about wellness, keeping ahead of that curve, but in the context of the law. And nobody's doing this, which is why I thought it was so cool. I'm really not just trying to put the book out and to get the book sold, but also hit the keynote circuit. And I focused on colleges and universities, because college kids are out in the wild for the first time, doing their own deals, writing their own contracts, signing their own leases, getting their own credit cards, auto leases, free to screw all that stuff up without any aptitude for the consequence or what to look for when doing those deals. And we get into all that stuff. And I just thought it was essential to let people know that this is something to keep in mind on the legal front as you get out there and live your life.
Yeah, it really is. Like there's so many good things that they need to be aware of. And, as much as we would love to see our education system change, where we actually have conversations about finances and about the legal things that you could get into and all of those stuff. The reality is there's so few of you or I doing that and having those conversations. So it comes back to, again, parents, what are you doing? You need to, for one, figure it out yourself, make sure you have a good understanding of it. So resources like listening to this podcast, doing that stuff, and then pass it on to your kids. Right. Start them young, get them on the right path, get them on savings plans, get them doing those things. So that way, when they do get there and have an open communication with them, that they feel comfortable asking you, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What are your thoughts on this? So it's a pattern you have to develop over and over again. And I love that you're bringing those resources and things to people's awareness, because, there is a lot of pitfalls out there that most people aren't going to know.
Yeah. And, I'm thinking back to, I think back to when I went to college, and my parents were dialed in, but I don't remember ever hearing anything about these kind of evergreen legal issues, I call them, that have been around and will be around. And I gave you one a minute ago, or a few minutes ago. What to do if you're in an auto accident, nobody knows. How to handle traffic court. How to stay out of trouble online. There's a newer one. I mean, look at all the defamation pitfalls and perils kids don't know to watch out for. Who could have could have benefited from a little legal wellness as it concerns defamation was Amber Heard. Had she known just this much about the elements of Virginia defamation law, because that was not a spousal abuse case, it was a defamation case, right? Had she known what not to say, she never would have posted that article, that op-ed on WashingtonPost.com, and she wouldn't have been out the $1 million it ended up being in settlement to Johnny Depp, much less the 6 to 15 projected $1 million in attorney's fees. Had she just known what the law was, or a little bit of this, a little bit of knowledge on defamation. And how about, if you have a kid who's a keyboard warrior from the basement, kicking stuff out and, pissing all over people and causing trouble, and everybody's getting sued for defamation these days. I mean, they are probably on your policy, and that could be on you ultimately, because they're a minor living in your household. And these aren't just nickel and dime defamation cases these days anymore. Look at the Dominion Voting Systems case with Fox. It was like $1 billion. The E. Jean Carroll case was like $5 million. The Alex Jones case with the Sandy Hook survivors, that was like $1 billion. I mean, these are massive, massive cases. Not that they're going to come through, but I mean, it is not a nickel and dime mistake anymore. It's got huge potential consequences if you don't know the contours of what you can and can't say, much less the First Amendment and its protections, because it does not protect you against everything like a lot of kids think it does. Look at the protests a couple of years ago on college campuses. Oh, I have a First Amendment right. You know what? Not so fast. No, you don't. There are a lot of nuances baked into that. Kids don't know any of them.
Yeah, a lot of things to be careful of. A lot of good advice there. Appreciate that. Just want to wrap up with, maybe some of the best advice that you got throughout your early career or growing up that really helped get you on the right path.
Sure. The keynote that I've developed for colleges and universities goes into the 3 tenets of legal wellness, 3 pillars. The first one is to avoid a victim mindset. You don't have to take it. Just remember and realize that you can fight back if that is you have the power and aptitude to know what your rights are. That's number 1. Number 2 is read your contracts. People just scroll right through everything. DocuSign makes it so easy. You know what? If you don't know what you're signing, you could be looking for trouble. If you can't change it, at least you know what to watch out for. That's number 2. But the third tenet really answers your question. And I call it, like my grandma used to say, and this is totally true, it's that you can't go wrong with your mouth shut. People say stuff that they shouldn't, that they wish they could take back. They say it online. They say it on campuses. It's so easy to avoid it. They give a bad Yelp review and get sued for libel. I mean, do you really want to go out of your way because you have an ego to say something stupid that you wish you hadn't? Amber Heard, it goes back to her. I mean, don't say stuff without knowing what the legal consequences of that might be. It's not a very detailed analysis. AI the thing. I mean, you'll figure it out. At least you have a little bit of guidance before you pop off. So keeping your mouth shut along with the other 2 pillars, I think those are the 3 real lessons that steer me, and I think can steer a lot of kids and other folks as they go through their lives.
Yeah, that's a lot easier said than done now that it's so easy to say stuff. But because of that, it's all recorded. You're never getting that back. There's no permanent delete there. So I like that. Keeping your mouth shut gets you out of a lot of problems. We'll end with that one. That's a great one. So thank you, Danny, for being on the show, sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us today. Really appreciate you.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. I hope folks enjoyed it, and you too. Thanks a lot.
All right, guys. With that, we'll end the podcast, and we'll catch you next time.